Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to peel back the layers of stories you think you know. And today, we're looking at Kekkaishi. It might seem like your typical supernatural action series on the surface, but trust me, there's a lot more going on underneath, deeply rooted in Japanese folklore and religious ideas. So our mission today is to really unpack how Kekkaishi builds its world. It's not just making stuff up. It's cleverly adapting authentic traditions. We'll be looking at the monsters, the Ayakashi, the barriers, or Kekkai, and this fascinating tradition called Onmyōdō.
Exactly. And it's crucial to get that this isn't just, background flavor. This adaptation is right at the core of the series. It shapes the magic, the plot twists, even how the characters grow. It takes these old ideas and makes them into, really dynamic engines for the story.
All right, let's dive right in then. First up, the monsters of Karasumori, the Ayakashi. Now, lots of stories have monsters, but Kekkaishi uses this specific word. What did Ayakashi originally mean in Japanese folklore? Was it like a common term?
Well, traditionally, Ayakashi wasn't just any monster. It was a pretty specific class of yukai, the supernatural beings that often explain weird phenomena. And the key thing, the defining characteristic, they were explicitly linked to water, always appearing above water. So there were creatures of that boundary, that space between the sea and the air.
Huh. Water specific, like what kind of creatures?
All sorts, depending on the region. You had things like vengeful sea spirits, the funai that would try to sink boats in places like Yamaguchi, or in Nagasaki, maybe eerie ghost lights over the water. There are stories from Chiba about a beautiful woman luring sailors, and the famous artist Toriyama Sekien even drew one as this huge sea snake. So yeah, very specific, very regional, and always tied to the water. It's fascinating how localized it was.
Okay, that's really different from the show. Kekkaishi basically throws that water connection out, right? Yeah. How does it adapt Ayakashi for its own story?
It does, yeah. It completely redefines it. In Kekkaishi, Ayakashi becomes this broad, almost generic term for any supernatural monster that's drawn to the Karasumori land. Doesn't matter if they've ever seen water.
Why do that? Just to simplify things?
Pretty much. I mean, traditional yukai lore is vast, hundreds of types. For an action series, you need threats that are easy to grasp quickly. So making Ayakashi the catch-all term works really well narratively.
Makes sense.
And, choosing Ayakashi instead of just yukai gives the series a unique vocabulary. It sounds specific, even though they broaden the meaning. Plus, the show builds its own logic around it. Karasumori land itself is key. It doesn't just attract them, it makes them stronger, smarter, changes their form. We even see this pattern where powerful Ayakashi start looking more human, maybe because they want to be human. Think about Kaguro. He was human, a samurai, and chose to become an Ayakashi. It really blurs those lines.
Right. Kaguro is a great example. And that brings us straight to Karasumori. It's called a sacred land, but it acts like a monster magnet. That seems totally backward compared to, a typical sacred place. What's going on?
It's a complete inversion, actually. Traditionally, a sacred land, a shinjuchi, in Shinto or Buddhism, is a purified zone. It's for benevolent spirits, the kami, and it's meant to push away impurity, kagare, often modeled by a Kekkai, funnily enough.
Yep.
But Karasumori, it does the opposite. It sucks Ayakashi in like a vacuum cleaner and then amps up their power. It's a beacon for danger, not a safe haven.
Why call it sacred at all? Is there a twist?
Oh, there's a huge twist. The sacredness isn't divine purity. It's raw, uncontrolled spiritual energy, and it's got a tragic source. We find out Karasumori's power actually comes from the sealed life force of Chushimaru. He was the illegitimate son of Tokimori Hazama, the guy who founded the Kekkaishi arts.
The founder's son. Whoa.
Yeah. Tokimori, out of ambition, gave his son this immense, uncontrollable power, and then basically had to seal him beneath the land because he couldn't handle it. And the seal wasn't perfect. So that's sacred power attracting the Ayakashi. It's basically leakage from this centuries-old, flawed containment effort, born from human error, from hubris.
Man, that changes everything. So their 400-year duty isn't some holy quest.
Exactly. It reframes it completely. It's not a holy war against evil. It's basically generational cleanup duty for an ancestor's massive mistake. It adds this layer of, tragic irony to the whole thing, especially the rivalry between the two families. They're fighting over managing a problem.
Wow. Okay, speaking of managing things, let's talk about the barriers themselves. The Kekkai. The series is named after them.
Yeah.
What was Kekkai traditionally before it became a glowing kami cube?
Right. The traditional Kekkai comes from Shinto and Buddhism, and the word itself traces back to Sanskrit, simabandha. Its whole purpose was creating a clear separation. It's about marking a boundary between the sacred and the profane, the ordinary world, and a space needing special reverence. It's meant to shift your mindset when you cross it.
Like a doorway or a signpost?
Sort of, yeah. Think about the torii gates at shrines, that's a type of Kekkai. Or the shimenawa, those sacred ropes you see on trees or rocks. Even subtle things like stepping stones leading to a tea house or Norin curtains in a doorway can function as a symbolic Kekkai. But the key thing is, traditionally, they're static. They're defensive markers, ritual boundaries, not, tactical weapons you whip out in a fight.
Okay, static and symbolic. So how did Kekkaishi turn that into this dynamic, almost aggressive magic system? You mentioned Onmyōdō earlier. Is that where it comes in?
That's exactly where it comes in. The name Kekkai is borrowed from the religious boundary concept, but the practice of Kekkajutsu, the barrier art in the series, was a huge debt to Onmyōdō. Onmyōdō, the way of yin and yang, was this complex Japanese system, mixing Chinese yin-yang theory, 5 elements, Taoism, Buddhism, Shinto, all sorts of things. And the practitioners, the Onmyōdō, weren't just fortune tellers. They were government officials, astronomers, calendar experts, but they also had mystical roles, protecting the capital from evil spirits, performing exorcisms, and crucially, creating spiritual barriers.
So Onmyōdō made barriers too.
They did. Think of someone legendary like Ebi no Saime. Stories abound about his magical prowess, including creating protective fields. So the idea of using systematic ritual magic to create barriers definitely has roots in Onmyōdō. Kekkajutsu takes that idea and turns it into a combat discipline.
And the shikigami feel like a really direct lift from Onmyōdō's as well, right? The little paper guys?
Oh, absolutely. That's a classic Onmyōdō element. Traditional shikigami were servant spirits, often bound to paper cutouts or dolls called katashiro. And Onmyōdō would use them for spying, sending messages, maybe even small magical tasks or attacks. What Yoshimori and Tokin do with their paper dolls, making clones, sending messages, creating diversions, it mirrors those historical descriptions almost perfectly.
So the whole Hazama-ryu Kekkaijutsu, the specific style they use, feels so methodical, like you said, systematic, almost like a programming language for magic. Can you break down those steps again?
Yeah, it's definitely what you'd call a hard magic system, clear rules, clear steps. The Hazama style has 5 core commands. First is Hyuk, enclose, that's targeting.
Got it.
Then Juso, foundation, setting the exact place and space.
Yeah.
Third is Ketsu, bind or connect. That's the command that actually forms the cube barrier.
The cube appears.
Right. Then, if you just want to get rid of it safely, there's Kai, release. But if you want to destroy what's inside, that's Metsu, destroy or annihilate, the barrier collapses inwards.
Ushi, Juso Keto, Diso, Esunayatsu is so concise.
Exactly. And incredibly versatile. It's not just shields. They use it to trap things, move around, crush enemies. It's really a clever gamification, you could say, of those complex, scholarly Onmyōdō rituals, turning potentially long incantations and astrological calculations into single, punchy words perfect for fast-paced action. The focus shifts from deep philosophy to skill, speed, and tactics. It makes it exciting.
And this system, this Kekkaijutsu, it doesn't just make for cool fights. It really defines the main characters, Yoshimori and Tokin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Yoshimori first. He's not exactly thrilled about his destiny initially.
Not at all. Yoshimori Sumimura starts off as the classic reluctant hero. He's kind of lazy, way more passionate about baking cakes, honestly, and sees being a Kekkaishi as this total drag. What really lights a fire under him is Tokin getting hurt protecting him when they were kids. That scar she carries becomes his motivation, this deep emotional vow to get strong enough to protect everyone.
And his power reflects that emotion, right? It's huge but wild.
Totally. He has immense spiritual energy, but it's raw, explosive, hard to control. It's like his emotions made manifest very yang,
Right.
Active, expansive, chaotic. His whole arc is about learning to tame that power, finding focus, what the series calls musu, so he can actually use his strength effectively, combine power with precision. And he has that weird connection to Karasumori's energy too, which becomes important.
And then there's Tokin Yukimura, who's almost his polar opposite. How does her approach differ?
Tokin is fascinating, yeah. She's everything Yoshimori isn't initially. Diligent, super composed, carries this heavy sense of duty from her family legacy and her father's death in the light of duty. Her strength is in precision, control, speed. She's incredibly skilled. But her actual Kekkai are weaker. She lacks Yoshimori's raw power output. She's very yin receptive, contained, controlled.
So she has to work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Her journey is all about innovation. She figures out how to overcome her limits by, say, stacking multiple weaker barriers to make them stronger, or developing techniques like these thin, piercing barriers to target weak points. Her strength feels earned, practiced, not just innate, and of course her relationship with Yoshimori evolves alongside all this.
It feels like their whole dynamic, their partnership, is tapping into something fundamental, like that yin and yang thing you mentioned.
Absolutely. It's a perfect embodiment of it. Yin and yang, those core Onmyōdō principles, opposing forces, but complementary and needing each other for balance. Yoshimori is pure yang, raw power, emotion, sometimes chaos. Tokeen is yin, precision, control, intellect, containment.
So separate, they're kind of incomplete.
Precisely. Yoshimori has the power, but struggles with control. Tokeen has the control, but lacks the overwhelming power. Together, though, they create this functional, balanced dynamic. They cover each other's weaknesses. You could even read the whole Sumimura-Yukimura clan rivalry, that centuries-long feud, as a symbol of imbalance, and the way the manga eventually resolves things, requiring both of them working in harmony to finally seal Karasumori properly. That's a really powerful thematic statement. True strength isn't in one extreme or the other, or in rivalry, but in finding that synthesis, that balance.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so pulling back a bit, the title Barrier Master Kekkaishi, it's obviously about barriers. But given everything we've discussed, it seems like it's exploring boundaries on many different levels. What are some of the big themes here?
Oh, definitely. The idea of boundaries is woven through everything. First, there's the very clear theme of inheritance and duty versus personal desire. This 400-year Kekkaishi duty is something Yoshimori and Tokeen are born into. Yoshimori desperately wants a normal life, wants to bake cakes, while Tokeen kind of buries her own desires under the weight of responsibility. And then finding out the truth about Karasumori, that it's an ancestral mistake, reframes their duty as atonement, not glory. It leads to that really bittersweet ending where they're finally freed from it.
Right, the burden of the past.
What else? Then there's the whole metaphysics of boundaries. You see it on multiple levels. There are the literal boundaries, the Kekkai themselves, imposing order on the chaos of the Ayakashi.
Yep, the cubes.
Then spiritual boundaries. Karasumori is literally a weak point, a thin boundary between the human world and the spirit world that needs constant guarding.
Okay.
Social boundaries, too. That bitter feud between the Sumimura and Yukimura families, right down to the property line dividing their houses, it's a boundary they absolutely have to overcome.
Rivalry, yeah.
And maybe most interestingly, moral boundaries. The series really plays with simple good versus evil. You have characters like Genshishio, the human Ayakashi hybrid, or Koguro, who chose to become an Ayakashi. They show that the line between human and monster isn't fixed. It's fluid. Ayakashi have their own complex reasons. Humans can become monstrous. The series suggests that boundary can be crossed maybe from either direction.
That's deep. Blurring the lines.
And finally, personal boundaries. You see it constantly in Yoshimori and Tokeen's relationship. How close can they get? How much distance does their duty or their clashing personalities force between them? They're always navigating that space.
Wow. Okay, when you lay it all out like that, Barrier Master takes on a whole new weight, doesn't it? It's not just about fighting.
Not at all. It really suggests that being a true barrier master is about understanding all these different kinds of boundaries, literal, spiritual, social, moral, personal. It's about knowing when to define them, when to maintain them, and maybe even when to break them down to find balance or truth. It's much deeper than just making cubes. And that's really how Kekkaishi stands out, I think. It takes this rich cultural background, these ancient Japanese ideas, and weaves them into the very fabric of the story, making it compelling and surprisingly thoughtful for what looks like an action show.
It's a fantastic example of how looking at the roots of a story, the cultural DNA, can just add so much richness, a real masterclass.
It really is. And, connecting this to the bigger picture, it definitely makes you wonder how many other stories, maybe ones that seem straightforward on the surface, are packed with these hidden layers of cultural or philosophical meaning, just waiting to be explored.
Absolutely. And maybe for you listening today, it brings up a question too. What are the important boundaries, maybe invisible ones, that you define in your own life? How do they shape your world? What happens when they get challenged? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Kekkaishi. We hope it gave you a new perspective.